Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Universal Church of Truth. Today, we are talking about the season question mark finale of Miss Marvel, No Normal on Disney Plus. Mary, please, 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 please give us your general thoughts, feelings, and opinions on this episode. I'm super excited to hear them.
I have a lot of them. To start, I think I know Miss Marvel's my favorite MCU series to date. That the finale solidified that for me. And I thought the finale was at least one of the best, if not the best. The issue or concerns I had from episode 5 going into it, were totally valid. like they didn't answer any additional questions. They honestly made it more confusing, and obviously we'll talk about the mutant reveal. I think we can say the word mutant now. But and it just and the writers I've heard talk about how they had a much more extensive backstory and explanation for the clandestines and the Noor dimension, but it got cut. That makes a lot of sense to me. But I mean, I think Kamran was a really good example of what's going on. Why does he have powers? Are they the same as hers? Why does she need a bangle? None of that was really fleshed out. And the mutant thing was super cool, but at the same time, didn't make sense for that either. So that's fine.
Yeah.
And they'll explore that down the road. But other than that, I think what made it such a great finale for me is they pivoted away. They pivoted hard away from that topic and brought it to kind of that first couple of episodes where it's Jersey City level, high school, teenagers, her group of friends. They brought it directly back into that and kind of just said, well, if you don't understand, we're just going to keep going. And I think that actually worked really well. I think as much as I want to know everything and understand everything, I'm not going to. But I think the way that they structured it, they did it the best that they could given their time constraints to make it a finale that finishes her story as it started. And I think obviously the post-credit scene and everything, we know more is going to happen in the Marvels, but I think they did her story very well, even though it did have wasn't perfect, and I think some of the confusion for me, and I'm going to stick on that. I like to know what's going on. But I think ultimately it was very, very good. I think what they brought back from I keep calling it the high school storyline, and you know what I'm talking about. Just not the Noor and the
the Jersey City storyline.
Yeah, and I think we knew they were very successful with that at the beginning of the season. And I will bet you money there's a season 2 or a solo movie soon.
Oh, there has to
be. If I know, but I'm still betting you money, and you have to pay me. But I'm just saying, it makes so much sense. But anyway, so I ultimately loved it. I think it was just quality-wise the best series. I really do. I think it was the most consistent. I think the story was better than the vast majority of stories, episode per episode, for the series. But yeah, so I loved the quirks and the charm and everything that they brought back, and the high school damage control kind of scene had, first of all, great music to it. I every time I watch it, I'm just start dancing with it. But then it's cute, but it's high stakes, but it's still these teenagers trying to do the right thing and all that stuff. And it is the heart of that character, and they brought it back and they showcased it, and they, presented her, here's Miss Marvel, here's why she got her name. We finally find that out. It brought the heart back, it brought the charm back. And then, so the downsides of the story are kind of lost to, 6-episode structure. You can't have everything, but I think they did the best of anyone in that structure, Marvel-wise.
Yeah. Well, that was a great episode, everybody. Thank you so much. No, that was a really, really great. I think sort of to sum it up, I for the most part agree with you. I mean, I think that it still suffers a little bit from that MCU randomness of throwing in oh, she's a mutant, which I mean is a huge thing for the MCU to do. In that moment, and the stuff going back and forth. But I think the word used consistent for me is very much the key to why I liked this show so much, because every aspect of it that I liked was there from beginning to end. And for me, that was huge. And like you said, it is kind of funny to me how you have those like two episodes where she kind of like leaves the country and then she comes back, and like those two episodes are really different tonally and story wise. And then what I loved about the original episodes,
Yeah.
which was all super fun and dandy. But that for me was why this finale worked so well, specifically because I loved those first couple episodes, and they went right back to that for this finale, and just brought me right back into that spirit and right back into that mood. And I think that was a huge thing. And I think for me as well, this is up there with WandaVision as one of my favorites. And I think it stuck the landing a lot better than WandaVision did.
Mhm.
So I was really excited about all of that. But for breakdown's sake, um, yeah, I think that let's start with, for me, what I liked even more than the mutant thing, and what I think worked even better than the mutant thing, was her costume and her name, and sort of that like final transition into like the full Miss Marvel persona and identity. I like that all very much. I know that you and I both voiced a lot of concerns.
Yeah.
The cat, everybody.
Berman.
I know you and I both voiced a lot of concerns about how they could potentially screw that up or make it not satisfying or anything like that. But I really, really love how her suit and her name both her parents, and how it really, really stuck to that like theme of family and parental relationship. Um, and even if, oh wow, her mom made that real fast and real well. Um, that aside, I just thought it was a very sweet moment, and
Mhm.
suspension of disbelief. I thought it was very, very touching, and I like that a lot. Especially the rooftop talk with her dad when he kind of reveals that her name sort of means Marvel, and that in his head she's like his little Miss Marvel, and that coming, that I like that a lot. It was very sweet.
Yeah. No, it worked. It worked because they knew what they. I think the show had such a strong sense of identity throughout, and I think all of them tried to, and I'm sure some of them feel like they did, but you could see it week after week. Like it knew what it was, knew who Kamala was, knew what it wanted to show, and it did, and it stuck with it. So yes, the reveal was a very family-centered reveal, and why her name's Miss Marvel, and throughout that makes the most sense. Like
Right.
I mean, it was kind of like a nobody really knew why, and there were different guesses that maybe when she went back in time, something happened and things like that. But I think, yeah, I think they managed because I don't know how those conversations went when they were like, okay, we're bringing this character to screen, but we're gonna change it a lot, and a lot of what
Yeah.
what if she's based on in the first place doesn't exist here, but we're gonna go for it. But they did it. I think they really did. I think
Yep.
they, and I think that was probably extremely hard to actually do. And obviously, a lot of Inhuman fans that didn't exist before and that now exist, they're mad. But okay, like move on. I
Yeah.
get it. You love the comics. She's an Inhuman in the comics. That's great. But this is another fictional universe, and you just gotta like accept it and see if you like it going
Yep.
forward. That's my opinion on it. And it's just too early to say what they're gonna do with mutants and Inhumans and whatever. But I think it goes to show how they know how popular she's going to be and
Oh
how
yeah.
she's going to be to the MCU. And they knew that pretty early on if they were willing to put the word, well, it's technically said mutant, it's a mutation in this episode.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. That's what I'm saying. They know. Like, they're like, we've got something here.
Yeah, no, and for
Mm-hmm.
me, I think the best part of that moment is the realization that like Kamala is going to be very important to this fictional universe, and that makes me really excited because I love her as a character, and I love Iman Vellani as an actress, and I'm so excited to see that going forward. And kind of what you just mentioned with people having different opinions on the changes they've made to the character compared to what they've kept the same, and all of that fun stuff. I've had this conversation a lot before, And for me, like I used to get more upset about that stuff than I do now, because I think what I've started to realize is that what's really important when adapting a character from page to screen is, at least for me, the soul of it all. So for me, like if you can adapt a character, I don't mind if some things get changed, as long as when I'm watching that thing, it still feels like that character. It still feels like the soul and the spirit of that character is what is being accurately translated. And watching this whole show, especially the Jersey City stuff, and especially when you have she gets that suit and she is, jumping around on her, sorry, Mary, hard light, little like discs.
They haven't been calling it hard. I mean, I'm sure they are, but I don't think in
Yeah.
this episode they ever said hard.
I just like to see your reaction when I use it.
It just sounds so silly.
Um,
Just, oh,
Well,
oh,
anyway, the not hard light nor platforms, when she's like jumping from platform to platform, and she is that Jersey City teenage hero, and that is what I really really loved about this episode,
yeah.
is I really felt that from beginning uh, to end. And there's a lot of really good parallels, I think, in this episode. Like I really, really liked when okay, so you said in the past in the comics that her mom kind of like already knows when she tries to like reveal to her that she's Miss Marvel. And I did like that they replicated that in this episode, but with the whole family and all of them being like, "Oh, what?" And the family just being the lovable family, especially Amir, who I love. Um yeah, he's really really great. So I liked them replicating that, and I especially liked the line there where her mom says, "Yeah, we trust her," right? And going all the way back to like the very beginning of the show, and I was like, that right there is what sells the finale to me. Like that is what I really love.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on all of that, but I love it so much.
All of what specifically? I mean, so okay,
All of
no,
the opinions on like the parallels and like the
yeah, okay,
relationships and that like parent-child relationship, that's a big thing in the
yeah,
MCU, but it's a big thing in this show as well. And I think that you see that with Kamran's storyline in this as well, is like the whole uh conflict between him and Kamala is that like he also wants a relationship with his mom in the same way that Kamala does, and his mom also chooses him. I mean, it's unfortunate that she had to perish
like
for
wow.
that to happen. I guess I don't know, but that like that
They could,
being such a big theme in the show.
I really wish they could like just tweet out like a general summary of what they didn't get to put in. So I was really interested in that whole like how does the Noor dimension work? Like what exactly are clandestines do this? I was very interested in that. So it's sad that that didn't make it in, but I get why.
Yeah,
But
I
I agree. I thought the moment where her mom said, "We trust her," right? Like obviously, because she was the one saying, "No, we do not trust her," on the couch the very first episode, and so that was sweet. And I think a lot of what they did with the family and friends, I think it all happened really quickly and kind of abruptly, like very easily. But
yeah
because I mean, in the comics, her dad doesn't find out till way later. I don't recall her brother finding out in the comics, and maybe I just didn't end up reading those. I'm not sure, but so to me that was different and noticeable. But it was very easy. None of them cared. Like they were like, "Cool," you know.
yeah
But I think it was something they didn't need to spend too much more time on her trying to hide her identity from certain people. That's such a trope, and even though it's like
it's a trope, and
it's a
I don't
big
think
trope, like in real
yeah
life, when that happens, the family's not just like go
right.
for
And I
it.
think I think
But
the writers though too, they understand like that's not really the story we need to be spending time on here.
exactly.
Yeah, and so it's fine to just kind of like blow through it and like have that sweet moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes, I thought they stuck to what they did best, and I mean they knew what they did best because it's easy to say that in like hindsight when it's like maybe at the time that they're ready they have no idea what they did best, but they knew that the family aspect is so strong, and they knew that the chemistry between just the family and the friends, but like it's just so good, and I loved that. I promise. Just kidding. He's still alive.
You can show the cat as many times as you want. I'm
Well,
sure that no one's gonna be upset.
he kind of gets caught. There's my couch. But no, my boy. But oh, the high school scene. I just love how everybody was involved. I love those kind of
Yes.
guys. Like everyone's doing their own thing. We're all helping out. And towards the end of that, when damage control is kind of about to finally leave, when the whole kind of community comes together around her, and even the JCPD, I assume it's another, kind of stood aligned. And that was very much that Jersey City community. She's our superhero.
Yeah.
Very sweet, very sweet.
Especially I like to in the sort of the epilogue of the episode when they're showing all of the people we've seen from throughout the series, including G. Willow Wilson, who was like one of the co-creators, like big writer for Miss Marvel, popping up on screens and like everyone being like, "She's our hero and we love her so much." Like all of that was very, very sweet and heartwarming.
Yeah, and I think there's also that's a really good example of how they know not necessarily their audience, but their subject. There's teenagers,
Yeah.
right? So they're all on. I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
it's simply Instagram that they're showing, but they're all on TikTok and Instagram. Like, so we talk about TikTok, obviously, and so I don't know. I mean, you can tell people who are writing this like are kind of I don't know, because sometimes people write things for teenagers, and you're like,
Yeah, like that's not actually that's not
yeah,
how the cool kids are talking these days.
no,
Not that
exactly.
I know how the cool kids are talking these days, but
But sometimes you just know that that's not it,
yeah, I can tell. When the vibes don't hit right, we know.
Yeah. I will say my thoughts on the villain. We can talk about Kamran. Let's talk about Kamran first.
Okay. This was what I was gonna segue into. So it's like you read my mind. That was really great. Yeah, so that's another thing that you and I have spent a lot of time like theorizing about on here and like talking about saying like the clandestines just weren't really it in terms of villainy and how we were hoping the finale would reveal some sort of like so Kamran specifically, last episode, we went on this whole theoretical binge about the potential he had to kind of like flip the switch and become sort of the surprise villain at the end.
Mhm.
And that like didn't really happen, but also like sort of kind of happened for like a minute. Like they really are into this idea of Kamran being part of the Kamala story going forward, and they left his future wide open.
Yeah,
So
I
we'll
know.
see.
And I will say, I think our theories basically came true, except
Yeah,
for Kamran wasn't full villain. But like what
yeah,
he did kind of out of control and like learning
yeah,
that his mother died, like kind of that out of control, anger, kind of stuff. Looked like it for a bit. Obviously, he left the country, met up with our good friend Kareem the Red Dagger. I assume I don't think they ever said that was his first name, but in the comics it is.
I feel
Um,
like in some interviews, the actor has referred to the character as Kareem without like. So even if it was probably scripted, and then they maybe just like never actually said it in the dialogue.
I think
Yeah,
it's good. So yeah, and that's very interesting with Kamran. And maybe I do. There's there is no way there's not a season 2 or just a solo movie like soon.
yeah.
Like not in
No,
like
there's no way.
much Marvel, so not like a Black Widow situation when she gets her solo movie 27 years later. But because here the same things I was saying before of what's not resolved and what won't be resolved. Bruno's the biggest one for me because he had to walk in on her and Kamran almost
Yeah,
kissing out, and it was so awkward. And like so, her and Bruno's thing completely unresolved, and he's like going to Caltech and everything. So would be a perfect jump if you go into next season. He's gone there and he's come back. But anyway,
yeah,
but that's not resolved, and that's such a big part of Kamal's story. So I kind of feel like that's just a really obvious example of why they might go that way. They just introduced Zoe as a friend, and
yes,
that's same in the comics. She's kind of that bully girl who then comes around after the events of Secret Wars, or the events of the last days leading up to Secret Wars, I should say. So, and she has a whole little arc where she comes out and she has a crush on Makia, and it's a very sweet little thing. not that they have to do everything that's happened in the comics, but they kind of set that up a little bit too. Like they hinted at that if you knew what they were going for. They were very hard. And then Conran's wide open. Are they going to leave him open so
Yeah.
they can explain more about clandestines and more dimensions
I
of that?
wouldn't be surprised if like the post credit, like the Marvels comes out, and then when it's over, instead of saying, you know, Carol Danvers will return or something like that, if that's not like Miss Marvel will return in like Miss Marvel season 2 or something like it, or like if sometime around the Marvels coming out we find out, because I feel like right now the only reason they're not advertising a season 2 is because they really want people who liked this show to go see the Marvels if they want to see what happens to Kamala next. So I feel like we might not get any form of official announcement until around that time the movie's coming out or right after. But I feel like there's absolutely, because there's no way that all of that is something that is playing into the Marvels. So like at least some of that has to be a season 2 or another solo
That's
project.
what
Like
I'm saying.
there's
Yeah,
just no way. Yeah.
can resolve her like personal life problems, like in the Marvels. I'd hope not, at least.
Right.
But yeah, no, I agree. Although with SDCC and then D23 coming up, you never know.
Yeah, that's also
Especially because it's been very successful, at least critically. I know like numbers on Disney Plus are kind of hard to find sometimes, but suggest it's been lower, which isn't surprising. Like it's a high school show about a type of person most people can't relate to, and putting that in
right.
quotes because people are idiots. But um, so maybe they capitalize around them. But I mean that makes sense too. But I find it very hard to believe. I could see it being a movie though, but I think it's worked really well on like episode format. But that doesn't bring in as much money. Also.
Yeah. Sorry, my doorbell just rang and I was really I just got distracted by it right at the end. Okay, this is going so well. Um no, so I'm really glad you brought up like Zoe and all of that stuff, because I was going to bring that up as well. Um like you said earlier in this discussion, a lot of stuff seemed fast and easy, and it was enjoyable and delightful enough that it didn't really bother me in the moment. Um and it still doesn't really bother me if I'm being completely honest. But like I knew that Zoe ends up kind of becoming one of the besties at a certain point in the comics, so I was expecting that to happen in the show as well. But it is one of those things where it's like when you only have those 6 episodes, Zoe is sort of prominent in episodes 1 and 2, and then disappears, and then all of a sudden in episode 6, literally just pops up and is like, "Hey, I'm part of the crew now." Um,
So
and you,
that other guy, that other fucking guy who was in the car in
yeah,
episode 2, I'm like, who is this guy? And then he's just in the closet in this one for like
yeah.
not his fake boyfriend. That
And I'm
shit.
almost like, almost part of it, like when they do that, I'm like, is that even a fake boyfriend, or are they actually setting up like a romance there? Like what's going on?
I
Because
don't know.
that also was like, it was funny, but it was super random. I was
It's
like,
not
I don't
his
know.
real character, so it's hard to really say like what they were doing. So clearly
Yeah,
he had more time. He filmed more scenes. I'm willing to
yeah.
bet.
I'm
And
willing to bet he filmed more things as well.
more stuff in like a group buddy friendship kind of thing, and then he just didn't make it because whatever reasons. But he still popped up.
Right. And I guess
He's there.
my question for you and along those things is, you mentioned Zoe being like a bigger part in like a Last Day story arc and all that sort of stuff. So like Zoe popping up in this episode and just kind of randomly being like, "Hey, part of the crew now." How does that sort of play out in the comics compared to
Yeah.
this?
So as reminder, so the very first run volume of Miss Marvel ended in Secret Wars. So I mean, the last like freaking thing is like as the incursion is happening, and then that obviously goes into the bigger event. But so in the last couple of issues, they all like the whole realistically, I don't know, Jersey City supposedly like goes to this high school, so I guess it's the community, to like it's unclear because they know the end of the world is coming. So I mean, you've got people praying, you've got people just trying to have a good time, you've got people trying to have resources available. So it's interesting because it's like I don't know if we're all on the same page of like you're all just gonna die, but you know, and but it's kind of a sweet moment. There's a page in there where they all just like decide to just start dancing in the middle of it because it's the end of the world. Why not? But
Right.
during this time, Zoe has kind of come to a realization that she doesn't need to be, for lack of a better term, classic term, a bitch, a bully or whatever, and
Yeah.
kind of chooses to. And she has a little moment with Kamala where she's like, I was jealous of you. And Kamala's like, what? Like, get to that
Yeah.
classic, she's always a blonde, super popular girl kind of thing. And they had that moment. And then since then, she just became this, like, almost poster girl for, like, reform. She, like, has, like, streaks of pink hair in her hair now. She, like, cares about recycling, like that kind of shit, So,
But like a full 180 and is
yeah,
like,
very much kind of that, like, activist thing. So and I think that the world is going to end and we're going to die was her catalyst. And so once you go into the second volume of Miss Marvel, like, that's already become part of her friend group. Like, that's already kind of established. And she remained that way. And then eventually, it was an interesting little arc where there was sort of this cyber villain, and he was like blackmailing people. And with Zoe, he had got a bunch of like letters she never sent, or notes she never sent to Nakia, like expressing her love for her and stuff. And so she really had to struggle with, except for being blackmailed. So some people like following through what they were told to do, other, and she had to just come out with it. And it was a really interesting moment, and that one that I thought I didn't know if they were going to go towards in this
right.
series, probably not, but it would be relatively big.
There
Although
is that there's that sweet little scene between her and Nakia where Nakia's like, if you knew that Kamala was Nightlight at the time, this whole time, then like why didn't you say anything? And Zoe has that really nice line of like, I felt like that was her secret to tell
yeah,
in that moment.
yeah, yeah,
And I feel like that interaction is sort of hinting towards the possibility of that in the future, and that's I thought that was a really sweet little bit.
yeah. So I think they set up Zoe to have a bit more development if they wanted to, and they just don't need to do that if they don't think they can in the future. They don't, they can do whatever they want to do. I don't know, but I stand by the high school stuff is the stuff that makes me think season
Yeah.
2 or whatever.
Oh, it's
I can't shake that from my core at this point.
the
It's
ending is absolutely
how
season
well
two
it was
setup.
received and how good it was. Like, it'd be kind of lame for them not to. Whatever. Okay, second villain we haven't discussed. The main,
COD,
yes,
a lady agent
yes.
whose name I do.
So, yeah, I think okay. So
I don't
one of
remember the other guy's name either. If that.
I really don't. McQueary, McQueary. So, I don't know.
Cleary, Agent P.
Sounds
Cleary.
kind of
That
right.
just
Yeah,
popped
I
into my
can
head.
P Cleary, please.
Poliri,
Yeah.
Agent
Mhm.
Poliri, Pacleary.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people's concerns after episode 5 was, wait a minute, is Damon should kill the villain now? Like, we didn't care that much, and that's fair because they were kind of like given their foundation early on, but they didn't do too many hardcore villain things other than just like being inconvenient and like kind of coming after her, at the end of 3, end of two.
It's
Um, and I mean, I think it worked though, because I think it highlighted the same Jersey city. She is a Muslim Pakistani in that city, and it emphasized sort of non superhero shit she and her community have to go through anyway. So I think that also highlighted that same Jersey City plotline we liked, and we thought was, I assume you're agreeing with me, was
I do very much agree with you.
and
Yeah.
I just didn't want to speak for you, but I was just I think it helped emphasize that plot line of it, and I think it was a decent means to do it rather than having like the veil opening in the middle of Jersey City kind of thing. The last episode would have been a bit different, so I think it worked in that respect. But I think damage control was kind of lame, and they took the bad apple approach in this
Yeah.
last one, which was interesting. So
I
they
did notice that. I did.
Mhm.
I thought that felt like sort of a cop out on
Yeah,
my, because I was really ready for them to be like, okay, if we're making DOD the villain, then we might as well just go full send on like the metaphor and everything that we're trying to talk about. And instead they did go the bad apple route. And I was genuinely surprised because Agent Cleary had previously shown no signs of like remorse or not being into it. And then in this, all of a sudden he's like, "What, children?" And it's like, "Oh, all right, well, you were
yeah,
really into this a couple episodes ago."
yeah. To me, this is a couple things, and they're kind of contradictory. But one, maybe they don't have that many plans for damage control going forward, and they really put a lot of emphasis on them in this show, but that's not, maybe we're not going to see them that much in the future. So it was kind of just like a one off, but you want to leave this background organization not necessarily as this full blown racist, association organization. It also says but they don't want it to be that. Like they want it to be just, I think, a very generic-ish adversary across the board. I don't, they didn't have in, phases 1 through 3, like a consistent, obviously, Civil War brought this up, government thing
Yeah,
to fight against or have to deal with. And so I think having them there will help them in certain situations. So I think the bad apple was, okay, so we wanted to invoke a lot of the stereotypes that law enforcement agencies have against people like this here, but we still like this organization enough. We don't want to throw the whole thing under the bus, so we'll just throw this lady who was on Orange Is the New Black and was really great at being this sort of horrible villain in
yeah.
her effects down. Good casting on that, honestly.
I mean, I think that it's funny to think for me that at one point in time, Damage Control was supposed to have like an ABC like MCU Marvel television series where, it was going to be like a 20-minute comedy show, sort of like The Office. And then like that didn't happen because of the DC show that with Vanessa Hudgens that did more or less like the same thing. Um but was it Vanessa Hudgens? I could be wrong on that. I know it definitely had Ellen Tudyk and Abed from Community. Do you don't remember this show? It lasted for like one season and got canceled, and it was basically the same concept as Damage Control, but it was like in the DC universe, and they were like a tech company or something that like made things for superheroes. And it lasted for like one season, and then I do not remember what it was called, but it came out around the same time, and then Marvel canceled the Damage Control show. Well, this isn't officially the reason, but very likely the reason that Marvel stopped doing the Damage Control shows because like this was already on the air and it was way too similar, so they decided not to do it. But
Wow.
anyway, um, I'll look it up in a second. But it's funny that that seems to be like the original little direction they had planned for DOD, and like then they brought him into the MCU proper with Spider-Man: Homecoming, and there they were just like classic DOD, and they were kind of jerks via just being part of the government, yada yada. And now it's like Marvel's full blown in on like we will never get the 20-minute sitcom because now they are kind of dreary government agency with a knack for
Yeah.
scaring children and superhuman individuals. But
It was called Powerless. I just figured
powerless, right? Amazing. Was it Vanessa Hudgens? I was right, right?
it. Yeah, you were. That's what helped me find it so quickly.
But yeah, so that was one of the things I wanted to talk about. I was surprised to see Red Dagger come back. It was for like a very minimal role, but I really thought that last episode was the last time that we were gonna see him at all. So I was surprised that he kind of like popped back into the equation for a second, and I was extra surprised that it was to like have him and Kamran connect. And I don't know. We'll see how all that plays out. But my guess is if they do that comic book storyline where he comes to Jersey City next season, that'll also give us more answers on whatever happens with Kamran and all that fun jazz. So
And I think part of that, I don't know if that counts as a cliffhanger, but part of that where they left that with Red Dagger and with Kamran, I think also emphasizes like what's going on. Like, why do they hate clandestines?
Yeah.
What's like background with him? Like, what's he gonna do? Yeah, it's just kind of an open-ended thing that I don't apparently was not written to be that open-ended, which just
Apparently.
makes it interesting. Like, okay, are they going to try to do that in the future because they can, or are they just kind of be like, well, we couldn't do it, let's move on. Which I could see that being a very possible thing. But hopefully the Marvels will answer enough questions for me. Although once you
Yeah.
throw mutants in there, is the
Yeah.
Marvels answer the mutant question?
Which
Here, okay. Have this conversation with me,
I
please,
would love to.
please. Okay, so we find out she has a mutation where she's a mutant. They played the X-Men theme song,
Yeah.
animated show. Yeah, I never watched it, so I did not pick up on that. But okay. So what Bruno says is, we know why you can, use light or whatever from the Noor dimension and everything, but there's something else. You're also a mutant. So I'm like, what about her is being mutanty? Is Kamran a mutant, and that's why he can? Like, what is Kamran? That's my first question.
That's a really, really good question, actually. Because I have no answer for you. Because there's no like comic book thing to go to reference for this. So like that's a great point. Because you could say, okay, if she was the only one who could do that sort of ability, then yeah, I guess mutant makes sense. Because you could just say, okay, her mutant ability is that she can tap into the Nor dimension. The X-Men have had much weirder powers in the past. Like it's not too far fetched. But then you throw the clandestine in, who are from another dimension and have more or less the same abilities. So what
Yes,
is going on there?
I know. Like,
Because the
what
clandestine themselves didn't have those abilities, which is why they needed
But then
Kamala.
Cameron did, and Cameron did because the mom like
Yeah,
his name
they
and
sort of
like
did.
I assume transferred something to him. But yeah, to your point, some of them clearly couldn't just do. He had pretty hard light E powers too, for lack of a better word. We didn't talk about his powers much, like the show didn't, but it looked hard lighting, but like
Yeah,
more angry.
they were like they look slightly different than Kamala's just to like differentiate in battle. I feel like.
Seemed pretty similar.
Yeah,
Um, So, but that was my kind of first question when they said that. It's like, okay, she's mutant, and that's part of Bruno's part of what she can do. But it's like, what is she doing? What's the mutant part doing? Because the rest of us, in theory, explained already. So, like, what's the mutant part? I don't,
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
what it.
Because they established that the whole like her great grandmother had these abilities and like they yeah, I again maybe the Marvels will explain this a little bit more. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it's just that like her mutation is the only reason that she is able to tap into that like clandestine like oh her ancestor had these abilities because that's like what she was. But
Yeah,
like she like Kamala's parents didn't have her mom didn't have this ability
yeah,
because maybe she's not a mutant, and then Kamala's a mutant, so now she can tap in to whatever like DNA was already in her from her great grandmother that she didn't like her other family members can't access,
yeah. Well, no, and that makes sense because no
which
one.
is sort of inhumany also.
But think out Kamran for a minute because he's confusing me. But no one else that we saw in the past or present or whatever could do what Kamala could do. Even her great grandmother who had the bangle, I don't know what the fuck she could do with the bangle, but like not that. It was very different. So
Keep the
maybe
veil.
maybe that is the mutant part, is the fact that she can turn it into her. But
Yeah,
then it's
like
like, what was the bangle doing in the first place? I think
okay, this
kind of
feels like a
eventually a quantum band, but like, why did
yeah.
it
I
end
was
up?
gonna say this feels like a good place if we want to talk about the bangle to like. It feels like we also sort of have to reference what happens in the post-credit scene,
Yeah,
um, which for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, is that Kamala's bangle starts glowing again, and then she gets replaced or teleported, or it doesn't specify. So I guess we can't specify, but likely quantum nega bandified with Carol Danvers, who, surprise, Brie Larson was in this show. And she is now in Kamala's bedroom and looking at a lot of posters of herself and very confused. And the first time I watched this, I thought, okay, so maybe Carol found the other band and then was messing with it and it like switched them. But then the second time I watched this episode, I see that Carol is not wearing the other bangle when she appears in Kamal's room. So what's going on there? But for the people at home, it is seeming more and more likely that whatever that scenario is maybe the MCU's version of like the quantum bands and the whole gimmick that they do. Maybe, perhaps. Which, Mary, if you would love to explain to the people the quantum band.
I'm not as educated on this one. I mean, as far as what I know, I mean, you've got, let's be clear, especially because we're going to get into kind of pre-related territory. There's two different things. We've got the quantum bands and then the nega bands.
Two separate things.
Yeah. Quantum bands were created by who? One of those big old guys, like Ego. One of those guys.
Yeah, he was one of the. Here, let me make sure. But the quantum bands were Eon. Yeah, created by the cosmic being Eon, who I'm pretty sure is like a Elder of the Universe celestial type.
Guy, yeah. Mr. Eon, yeah, so he made him. But and there normally are two. But they take different shapes over time. Anyway, oh holy shit. What if the 10 rings are the other band? And the beacon was to the other band.
It's possible you just did something.
I haven't read all the like theory articles that have been going out even from our own site, so someone else could have said that already, but I just felt really smart.
That's
because she was included, Carol was included in the post-credit scene, and that's like her thing now, it's post-credit scenes, but
yeah.
And then she kind of had to leave really quickly. I think that was more of a gag, not necessarily with anything of meaning, but they made sure to include her with that. And so if it was a quantum band linking to another quantum band, they'd have her involved already. But because I just said they can take different forms at times, most of their bands, having, holy shit, that's why they changed it from rings to the thing, so it looks like a band. I'm done. I'm out. This one's not going to come true either because none of mine do. But I feel good about it.
It's been a minute since I've watched Shang-Chi. Does he
sense.
wear them on both? Does he do 5 and 5?
I think he does, yeah.
So would that technically be 3 bands then?
I don't know. I just thought it was cool because the quantum. Why am I saying quantum? But so the 10 rings. Once Shang-Chi has them, they obviously know they're sending a beacon to who knows where. Carol didn't know what tech it was. Interesting.
No. And Carol is very confused in this post-credit scene too. So it's clear that Carol doesn't know what's going on either.
No, but we could, in hindsight, maybe someday interpret her leaving very quickly as her figuring something out and going, holy shit, I don't know. But interesting thought. Just to the beacon part, because if it's looking for its friend. But then I don't know. What was I saying before I went on the weird theory? Oh, there's quantum bands. Anyway, they were supposed to be for people to be like protectors of the universe. And I think there's some sort of, not in a Mjolnir way, but some sort of worthiness component, like only certain people wield them.
And like the original Marvel had them in the comics, and like Quasar had them for a second, and like all these fun cosmic superheroes have sort of like passed along the quantum bands.
And they're just, well, they're very powerful. That's all we need to know now. And the nega bands were the Kree who found the quantum bands and were like, wait, we want our own. So they made like a replica, although the quantum bands derived their power from the quantum
Which is such a classic Kree move. This is like a thing that Kree do all the time, where they're like, oh, that's cool, I want it, and then they just try to like make their own version, and then they create like a whole separate thing by accident.
Yeah. Uh,
Inhumans.
but so I mean that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the clone bands and the nega bands. And the nega bands make sense, especially when we have that Kree arm and that flashback. Pretend this is a blue
Right,
Kree arm.
and then the negabands are the ones where if one person has one and another person has the other, then they can switch places.
Oh, really?
Right?
Oh, that's news to me.
let's
I'm not arguing. I just didn't know that. I'm not saying I think otherwise.
let's figure this out right.
Because if that's true, then that seems pretty big. Somehow at the end of this.
Yeah, there's so I just want to make sure I'm not thinking of the negabands. Um Yeah, so it's crazy. So things like this become really difficult with Marvel because like quantum bands, negabands, all these like cosmic things, they start to sort of like the more writers write about them and the more like powerful they become, they start having all of these like different abilities. But I know that there was a whole thing involving Rick Jones and Marvel or Quasar or one of the. Hold on, we're about to figure this out right now.
Well, Hunter does that, I will say. Be prepared for part of the Marvels to involve quantum or nega bands.
Oh, it's definitely gonna happen.
Yeah. Other than that, we don't know shit about that movie. I don't know shit about that movie. I'm
They've
not
done a
gonna.
really good job of keeping that movie like under wraps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So this is exactly what I thought. I just wanted to like clarify it before I got into it because I did not want to eventually sound like an idiot. So in the comics, Marvel ends up having the nega bands that like the Kree created, like you said, and he ends up with the nega bands and being trapped in the negative zone, hence nega bands,
Quantum
because they have
versus nega.
yeah, because they have a link to the negative zone.
Yeah. Because we
Yeah,
have the quantum
and
knowledge, and so we could be introduced to. Like,
right. So in the comics, what ends up happening is Rick Jones, who until this point was traditionally like a Hulk sidekick, Marvel decided they wanted Rick Jones to now be a Captain Marvel sidekick. So he ends up becoming connected to the Negabands, and Rick Jones sort of becomes like Marvel's avatar on Earth. And whenever like he's in a situation where he feels like Marvel needs to interfere, he will switch places with Marvel. Marvel will appear wherever Rick Jones is, and Rick gets sent to the negative zone until they switch back. Um, so it feels like, of course, I don't think it's going to play out exactly like that. If these Bangles are the MCU's version of Quantum Man's Negabands, my guess is they'll merge that into whatever. Um, then it feels like they're kind of giving Kamala Rick Jones' spot in that sort of storyline. I don't think, Rick Jones is often sort of considered a sidekick. That's not how I would consider Kamala at all. But I feel like they're going to link Kamala to Carol in the same sort of storytelling fashion that they linked Rick to Marvel back in the day, which I think is a fun connection and an interesting way to bring Kamala into the Marvel storyline.
mhm.
Um, I don't think it's going to be like Carol and Kamala are taking turns being in the negative zone. I think it'll be different than that, but I think that it'll be like a similar plot device.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see it.
Yes.
I can see it. I think 'cause that now comes after Quantumania because they were switched for a while and they switched their release dates again. I think both those movies are gonna kind of take things up a notch in terms of
Yeah.
the
I think we're
ramp.
going to get a lot of explanation. And it seems very possible that they would substitute the negative zone for the quantum realm in that quantum band, nega band scenario.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously the quantum realm's a big part. I mean, there's a big part of Endgame, but they really lightly built up the quantum realm before that. And I think now that they're like really telling us, hey guys, it exists. Are you excited? We have a movie called Quantum Mania. Are you excited
Yeah.
about? So I think it's gonna keep.
They're like, hey, it's
Saying,
not going away. It's still
like
here.
we're
So get
having
used to it.
like a party with it, basically. So yeah, I think more connections to that. I think that's going to be a looking for a strong story device throughout a lot. I mean, everyone's talking about the multiverse. That can work with the multiverse pretty well. So I think it's an easy way to still put this under the multiverse saga. And it's an easy way to understand why certain things fit into the saga that people don't seem to understand where it's going.
Right.
People, there's a multiverse out there and they keep going to it. Why would you act
I've
like
been
that's not?
I've been saying, like, it feels so obvious to me the route they're going, and people seem to still be confused. And I think that maybe it's just because we haven't gotten the projects that unify the different storylines yet. But I think that, like, the Marvels, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, it's going to start connecting dots for people, and you're going to start seeing, like, oh, this is what this phase is.
Well, here's the thing. Even in not post, pre-phase 4, not everything connected to what became Infinity War Endgame. I
Of
mean,
course.
right, and that's the same thing. Like, we're talking about things like Hawkeye, Falcon, and Winter Soldier. They're going to have their own fun little storylines, kind of almost how we used to be used to these kind of Avenger type stories, and they're going to be great. And then all this other stuff's going to happen, and then we're going to get to an event, and they're going to be like involved, and like, what the fuck's going on here? But it's not, no, not every project is obviously multiversal in nature. But I mean, you can't, that would be so boring. You gotta have some just stories. Like, not everyone has to
Yeah.
be the exact same story. And I mean, to your point, you always talk about how it's becoming more like a comic book universe. And I think that's fair. But even phase 4 fucking short. But I think before that, too, on a much more smaller scale, like they did that. Like Iron Man, look at the Iron Man trilogy, even including him in Civil War,
Oh, yeah.
include any of the Avengers mostly. I mean, I get Loki had it, whatever, but like they were not building up
No,
logic.
of course not. And I think the connection there that, like, pays off is that the like Tony Stark, and you look at that Iron Man trilogy, I think that's a perfect example. None of those movies are really connected to the Infinity Stones or like the Infinity whatever or Thanos or whatever. They're all very much like a self-contained trilogy
Yeah.
with some connections to like the Avengers movies. But what made those movies worth it when you watch Infinity War and Endgame is the character development that they give Tony Stark. And without those movies, you know, his sacrifice in Endgame isn't as big. It's not as important. And it's the same way, like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, um, you know, you have Sam Wilson becoming Captain America. That story obviously doesn't connect to the multiverse, but whenever we get to the climax of this like phase or whatever, and you have Sam Wilson as obviously a major player in that story, everything he went through in Falcon and the Winter Soldier suddenly becomes important because it's about him as a character. It's these stories are about the protagonists as characters. They're not existing strictly to connect to an event later.
I think, I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe made its brand on everything connects eventually. And I think for a long
Right.
time people accepted that, oh, we get one cameo or something, but now everyone expects it at all times, and that's iffy. Um, so I think the people that look at, let's say, Hawkeye, and then let's say we know that Daredevil is going to come back and Echo's going to have a show. Like, we know how those street level type things are happening. And then we at the same time we know, we've got Doctor Strange and that name of that movie.
A lot of M's.
The fact that you don't see, that some people do not see where it's going is interesting, because in the first three, you shouldn't have been able to, except for the fact someone once told you, hey, you know what Infinity Stones are? Yeah, so there's that purple guy in that post-Credits Endgame, or Avengers. Here's this. People are telling you that now with Secret Wars.
Yeah,
And what version of Secret Wars they're going to mainly use? Interesting. It's not going to be either one, like totally, but I'm curious which one they'll really, because they're the '80s one and then 2015 one are fairly different. I mean, it's both battle.
they're very different with the same basic concept of like the entirety of the Marvel universe, or at least the popular characters from the Marvel universe, ending up on some version of Battle World.
Yeah, which is cool, and that does not require these street level characters to do anything funky before that happens.
Exactly.
And that's what's cool about it because they get sucked into it and they're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
there's
that's the charm. That's the charm of the original Secret Wars is
yeah,
that like Spider-Man has no idea what the heck is going on, and then he just gets like, I mean, in the MCU he'll have a bit more because of No Way Home, but a character like Daredevil getting sucked into this battle world where like the Beyonder and like Doctor Doom are like all these crazy things are happening, and there's like he's like a chess piece in this intergalactic game that he had no idea existed, and him like taking everything we know about him as a character and then being forced to exist through that like is the fun part of that story.
no, that's just very exciting too, I think. I
Yeah,
mean, and thinking about right now is kind of exciting me because like I think like we are agreeing on, we don't need to like over baby people of this is what's going on for it to be cool. And it'll be so cool when, for whatever reason, whether it's just this one Beyonder guy being weird at this one time, or if we are going to see, which seems like we will based on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, incursions. So I can picture, like, let's say, I'll just use Daredevil. Everyone's obsessed with Daredevil, right? Good for you guys. And he's cool. I like him too, but people talk too much about him. But he's just chilling. He can't really, I guess, see it, but he'll know. But like, and in Kurt, like he'll
you
see
don't
it
want to use it.
because they see that in the comics. They can see the other world or universe coming to just smack him, and that's how a lot of it could start. And they'll be like, "We got to call up some people now."
Yeah, we gotta call the people because when you go into an event like that, you part of the fun is you have characters who don't know what's going on, and then you have characters who do know what's going on, and that's how you get out of the situation. And like again, same exact thing happened in Infinity War. Is like you have War Machine being like, "Bro, what are you talking about with these like Infinity Stones?" And then Doctor Strange is like, "Well, we gotta like
Yeah.
do this magic and yada yada yada." And there's one thing, and then all the other characters are like, "Okay." Like I don't remember people complaining that they didn't understand how Bucky Barnes would fit into Endgame. You know what I'm saying?
And then he's just there. He
Yeah.
not
He's
gonna.
just there as confused as everyone else, and that's part of it.
And I mean, yeah, but I know we're waiting on the bigger Fantastic Four,
Yeah.
reveals or whatever. But they're gonna be Reed Richards, more specifically. They're gonna be people that know what's going on, and
Yeah.
they're gonna be people that can kind of believe in that, like they generally do in the comics. You got Doctor Strange still having an idea, obviously, what's going on. So it's gonna be such a similar concept in a way that should be comforting to people who don't think they understand what's going on because it's like they're not doing something crazy that's just totally avant-garde and gonna fail. Like it's pretty structured, but I think the possibilities are all over the place. Once you got the multiverse involved, plus our own just 616, because you can't have everybody. Some of these people are
No.
dying out. And it's going
Yeah.
to be kind of Infinity Wars, because, oh no, one's going, how do we get back? But that's like
Yeah.
all confident. So,
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. I mean, they said like post Endgame would be like a completely different kind of MCU, but in my eyes, like it is in the sense that they're doing more daring projects and they're doing like
mm-hmm.
I've keep preaching and like you just referenced it feels more comic booky than ever, but it's also exactly the same in the sense that we're just starting back at phase one and we're in the same place that we all were in like 2010 when we just like we're trying to figure out how they were going to get all of this connected.
And I think the big difference is there's just so much more of
Yeah.
it. So they're spending more time on the, let's say, Iron Man level things in certain places than we got in phase one, not because they're more important or distract from the rest of the story, but because they're there and we can talk about them. We have the resources to make these stories. So it's just like picture the Infinity Saga, but with more detail in every little
Right.
corner of the universe.
Exactly.
really going on. But I'm sorry. I mean, we all know it's Secret Wars. Like even the Russo brothers are talking about Secret Wars.
Yeah, it's like an open secret at this point. Yeah,
You're lost. Anyway,
like it's not officially announced, but it's pretty much announced. Like,
could be soon, I guess too.
who knows?
I don't know.
Well, with that lingering question, is there anything else from this episode that you are dying to talk about, or do you think we have pretty much covered it?
I'm gonna talk about. I think I've talked about anything I'm dying to talk about. I think
Yeah,
it is my favorite series. I'm very confident about that. I mean, it was up until the finale, and I was kind of like, it needs to stick it, you know. And it did. And I mean, I just honestly, I think it was the overall like the best made show that they've done. I think that's
yeah. I think it's really great, and I'm excited to see where it's going. I really enjoyed watching it, and I really enjoyed covering it with you here on the Universal Church of Truth.
oh shout out someone on Twitter named Matthew Bass.
Matt
Bass.
Bass.
Yeah. Thank you
I
for watching.
have taken a bit of a social media break for the past week, so I didn't see it. But Mary let me know that Matt Bass also posted on Twitter to say that he is watching. So Matt and Adam, you guys are the MVPs, and we wouldn't be here without you. And I will continue to guilt everyone else into saying they're watching so that they can get their names shouted out on the Universal Church of Truth because we want to know that you're watching. We want to know that you like it. Um, and if you don't like it, don't say anything because if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all. Right, Mary?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
On the situation. But yeah.
with that, um, I guess that's goodbye for Miss Marvel coverage for now. Maybe the future. Who knows what it has to hold. I have been one half of your lovely host, Hunter.
I have been the other half of your lovely host. Do you say half of your host or hosts?
I say host because I think it's kind of funny to think
You're
that we're just like
you're
one
one host.
host. Like,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
I'm the other half of your one host, Mary.
And this has been the Universal Church of Truth. Thank you for watching, and everybody have a wonderful day.